Hi, I'm Tim. I'm CEO of Hingenuity. It's a small family business, and we are the inventors and manufacturer of Cabidor. And today we're looking at the assembly of a 2.0 Cabidor, and the 2.0 signifies that it is a flat pack model that requires a little more assembly. The advantage is it comes in a much smaller box and it's a lot easier to handle. I've got the parts spread out here just so you can see what we're doing. You've got the two sides, middle, top, bottom, and we've got the two rear panels. These are mirrored, which is what signifies deluxe. And 2 points with the mirror. Make sure the mirror goes to the outside. You don't want to see the back of your contents. And the mirror also has a protective film that's used to protect the mirror during shipping. So be sure and peel that off before you install it. I'm going to just set these over to the side here to give me a little bit more real estate to get this thing assembled, and we'll dive into it. All right, let's get this thing built. This is Bago hardware. I just like to dump it out. We'll go through the parts and pieces as we move along. Very crucial are these four pieces right here, the two sides. Now when I set these up, I make sure that the groove that the rear panel goes into, the groove is on that side, they're on this side, so that when you assemble it, you'll see later, you just pick this up and it goes right on top. So you're not trying to get this thing up and turn it around to line it up. Do it ahead of time, you'll thank me for it. There's a crucial difference between the ends of these two boards. There are holes in the ends of these, and you'll notice that the holes in this one are a little bit bigger than the holes in this one. The short end goes into the bigger hole, and you'll see why. This collar actually fits into that hole. And there's a little shoulder inside this hole that stops the dowel at the perfect depth so that it engages with the cam. Little arrow right there needs to face toward the hole. And then the dowel with the collar will go in the larger hole and engage with the cam, and when you turn this, it locks it in place. Okay, we talked about the double dowel, the cam, the single threaded dowel, and we also have a wooden guide dowel. You don't need any glue. You'll notice on the ends of these boards, there's just a little hole drilled. You just pop that dowel in and it helps guide the top, bottom, and middle pieces down as you thread your way over the dowels. It makes things a heck of a lot easier. So I'm going to go ahead and get all these dowels put in, and we'll put this thing together. Yeah, it's better to start these little blue dowels by hand just to get them so you don't cross thread them. Get them started and then come back with a screwdriver. Or if you're fortunate enough to have an impact driver, that speeds things up quite a bit, but it is certainly not necessary. Get all these screwed in. And once again, just snug these up. Don't over tighten them. When you tighten these, there's a little collar around the base just at the top of the threads. Get that snug to the plastic insert and stop, otherwise you'll strip it. So take it easy. If you are using an electric screwdriver, a drill, or an impact driver, ease up on it because you can strip these out and that's going to create a problem. Just get them nice and snug and they should be good to go. All right, it is time to start slinging some cams. Make sure the arrow is pointing toward the hole in the end. And just press them into place. And if they're not quite lined up, just take your screwdriver and turn them a little bit to make sure the arrow and the gap in the front of the cam is facing the hole. All right, I'm gonna go, once again, larger hole, gets the short end of the double dowel. Slide the other one together, and now you just Snug your cams up, and it grips the end of the dowel and pulls everything tight. I've gotten my double dowels into this piece. We're putting them in to the other side. Just snugging up those cams. Next step is going to be putting in the center shelf. You've got 6 holes that correspond to these 6 dowels, 2 guides and 4 of the blue threaded dowels. We need to put cams in here, and notice that there's a groove along the back of the shelf. That's where the rear panel goes. It needs to line up with this groove. Cams in first, arrow toward the hole, and you need to hold this straight so they don't fall out. Sometimes the cams will drop out if you tilt it to the side, but it's pretty easy just to snap them in, and they're fairly snug, so they shouldn't fall out. Okay, I've got my cams in. Just drop it on top. Yeah, sometimes you need to adjust those a little bit and make sure it's down nice and tight. Turn the cams, snug them up. That'll pull it in. And it'll flush that center shelf to the side piece when you tighten those down. Okay, once the center shelf is in place, make sure that the groove lines up, because that back panel will slide right in there. Next step is going to be to put the rear panels in. This is a mirrored unit, a deluxe, so there are mirrors on the back. As you can see, make sure you put the mirror to the outside, and there's a little narrow groove right here, a little reveal that needs to go to the top. There's a wider border that goes to the bottom. Put the back corner in, and then slide it in diagonally, and there you go. You can peel the protective coating off after the fact if you want to protect it while you're assembling it. Same thing on this side. Drop it in diagonally, and you're good to go. Now it's time to get the top and bottom on. You've got these two, and they are not identical. One thing you need to pay attention to are the little pilot holes, the little holes that you screw your magnet into. The side of the cabinet that has holes all the way through it, those pilot holes need to be on the opposite side. So this piece, pilot holes are here. The piece that the hanging hardware attaches to is going to go on top. So those pilot holes need to go to the bottom. I need to put cams into the end of the shelf, and then you just take that, slide it in. And I would suggest as soon as you put a piece in, tighten the cams, because it's really easy to forget. Get that nice and tight and snugged up. We'll move to the other end. Got my cams in place. Snug those up, and then it'll be time to drop the other side on top. You can put the little wooden guide dowels into this piece that I'm getting ready to put on now, but they're just friction fit, there's no glue, so sometimes they'll fall out when you flip it over. So I find it easier if you put these little guide dowels into the ends of the top, middle, and bottom shelf. That way there's no danger of them falling out. And then take your cams, now that you've got your shelves in place, arrow and slot facing toward the hole. See, when you do these, that little arrow on the back of the cam is going to be facing up. And let's get those in there, and got 2 more to go. Let's put the other side piece on. Kind of gently lay it on there, and then you'll have to make your way down and line up the dowels and kind of tap it into place. There we go. Give it a little tap with the heel of your hand. Sometimes you'll find that it gets hung up a little bit. The cams can move. So just make sure that arrow is pointing the right way and gently tap it into place. We don't want to get too carried away. 2 more to tighten. And we have ourselves a Cabidor. All right, it's time to measure the hinge spread and determine whether this is a right or left hinge door. If you're facing the door and the door opens to you, the hinges are on the left, it's a left hinge. And let me show you how I measured to locate the hanging hardware. I measure from bottom of hinge, I'm hooked under the hinge there, to the bottom of the hinge here. You got to either be bottom to bottom or top to top. Okay, we're going to put the hanging hardware on. So this is a left hinge door we're going to install this on. So we need to take the hanging hardware, kind of go toward the top. That way, if you have a raised panel door, you can get past that to put your magnet on. Slip in the screws. They can be in adjacent holes. You can skip one hole and go to the next. Doesn't make any difference. Most importantly, the order of the hardware. You've got screw through hanging hardware. On the inside, you go with a flat washer, then do this little tiny lock washer, and then a wing nut. Note that the wing nut will not spin. Just hold the wing nut and get it started with the screwdriver. And then you can just let it go because the trim will stop the wing nut from spinning. So we were 58.5 inches, hinge to hinge. We'll come down here, just get it close. And keep in mind, you're measuring from the top of the hardware to the top of the hardware. Slip a screw in. Go ahead and put on your flat washer, lock washer, wing nut. Get it close, but don't tighten it down all the way because you're going to have to remeasure and make sure that you are right where you need to be. But you get it close. We'll remeasure. 58.5. Remember, top of hardware to top of hardware. There we go. Tighten it down. Do the same with the second screw, and your hanging hardware is installed. Now I'm going to move up to the top of the cabinet, and I'm going to put the magnet on. The magnet joins to the top of the cabinet with 2 small Phillips head screws. There's a pilot hole there that lines up perfectly, so it's very easy to put in. And it's important to remember to flush the magnet up with the outside of the cabinet. Tighten the screws, but before you snug them all the way down, make sure that the body of the magnet is even with the trim. That way you'll get good solid contact on this striker plate, which will end up on the door. All right, now that the hanging hardware and the magnet is in place, it's time to start putting in some shelves. A good guide for putting in the shelves is to find the tallest item that you're planning to put on each shelf and make sure it'll fit. It doesn't have to be exact at this point, but if you've got some tall bottles or something, you need to make sure you have enough space. Key to this is the position of the shelf pin. The shelf pin needs to ride up like this behind the shelf and the shelf on top. That way, the end of the shelf keeps the shelf pins locked into position. This unit is going to move every time you open and close your door and every time you open and close your Cabidor. So if they're not locked in behind the shelves, the pins may fall out, and that's just an irritant that you don't need. Shelf pin will sit like this. The shelf sits on top, locks in there, and they cannot fall out once the cabinet is vertical. And I like to elevate the end of the cabinet where the magnet is because it keeps the shelves tilting back and they won't keep falling over like this because it kind of gets in the way when you're trying to put your retention rods in later. Put them in diagonally, slide them against the shelf pins. Simple as that. All right, now it's time for retention rods. I generally put these 1 or 2 notches above the shelf itself. Start them on this side. The holes for the hanging hardware are also used to insert the retaining rods. And you can slip, there's a slot in that hanging hardware so the rod can go right in between. Now, rubber grommets. They slide down the rod all the way to the other side and keep it from sliding out. It stabilizes it. They're kind of snug. Take the grommet and slide it on the end of the rod, and then just work your way down. Bring the rod across and put it in the corresponding hole, and then you want to snug that grommet against the inside wall of the cabinet, and that'll keep the rod from falling out. Keeps it nice and snug. Okay, those are snugged into place. If you do have to move a rod after the cabinet is installed, if you're in a corner, you can't slide them out because you'll hit the side wall. So this is what you do. You push it out just enough to get this in past the trim, and then take your hand and kind of flex it in a gentle arc. And then you can pull it out. You want to make sure it's flexed above this so you don't scratch your trim. Putting it back in, same thing. You kind of push down with your thumb and up with your hand. Push out, come back to the hole, snug it up, and you're ready to go. Okay, it's time to put the handle on. You're using the same screws that you used to put the hanging hardware on, so the same order. The only difference is it curves, and you need to have the curve facing this way. So it basically faces the inside of the cabinet, so when you grab it, when you're opening it, you can pull it that way. Same order as the hanging hardware. Flat washer, split lock washer, and wing nut. And on this one, the wing nut will turn, so knock yourself out. Handle is in place. It is time to hang the Cabidor. Now I'm going to remove the hinge pins, and the hinge pins will go through our hardware. And I don't have a pin punch or a nail set or anything fancy, it's just a nail. Just an old nail, and you go up through the bottom, tap it out, same on the bottom. Now you need to make sure your door is closed. If you can, lock it so somebody doesn't walk in because you're pulling out the hinge pins. There's the bottom hinge. Here's the top hinge. Put the hinges in a spot that you can reach them easily, because you're going to pick up the cabinet and rest these brackets on top of the top and bottom hinge. It is definitely easier and safer to have someone help you. Okay, that one's in. Now we've got the hinge pins inserted through our hardware. The Cabidor is hanging. Now we just need to attach the striker plate to the door, and that's why I left the striker plate on the magnet. That way you know it's in a perfect position. You peel the sticky back off, close the door, press firmly after you've pulled the liner off the back, and now it's located in the perfect spot. You are now free to load and use your Cabidor.